Do you want to know the importance of a balance sheet? If you're an investor or a trader, then you're in the right place because today we are going to talk about the importance of a balance sheet. That's right, a balance sheet. Sounds boring, but no, it's not going to be boring. We're just going to get into it. Welcome to the Sunday Money Church brought to you by the Black Wealth Rebels. My name is Jimmy. I am here dolo today, 1/3 of the Black Wealth Rebels, but Sunday is our class day, right? It's Sunday Money Church, Finance Church, whatever you want to call it. So I am here so we can talk about balance sheets. Matter of fact, let me make sure I share this out to the community as folks come in live. Listen, if you are here live, I definitely appreciate it. If you're watching this on the replay, guess what? It's much love to you as well. I know you're probably wondering, like, where is Kamari? Where is Corey, right? So it's a lot going on with our camp coming up this weekend, right? So this is Saturday, July 5th is this Saturday, right? So Saturday is the start of our camp. It's our first week, so it's a lot going on. Also, by the way, Kamari's not here, so the slander starts. Kamari is traveling from a tax conference of all things. That sounds wow boring, doesn't it? A tax conference. But anyway, so I'm here dolo, but I definitely want to make sure that I get this presentation in. I won't be here for a long time, but I'll be here for a good time. As I always say, not going to be here long, but I will be here to go through this presentation about a balance sheet. And I see some folks coming in live. So if you are here live, please let me know that you're here and that you're watching. You know what I mean? Like I said, Kamari and Corey aren't here, and we're gonna breeze through this, but we're gonna get through it nonetheless to talk about a balance sheet. You know what I mean? And if you haven't, by the way, if you haven't yet registered your kid, your niece, your nephew, or passed it around, the information about our camp, bthcamp.com. Camp does start this upcoming Saturday. It's completely free. Just go to bthcamp.com. Make sure to get registered. Make sure to share it out. And I appreciate everybody who has been sharing it because I saw it shared all over the internet, and we definitely appreciate the love. So want to say salute to that. I just made sure I shared out the fact that we are live right now, getting ready to get into this presentation. Like I said, if you are here live with me, please let me know. I'm holding this down dolo today, but we're going to get into a presentation nonetheless because we do have a class about balance sheet and why balance sheets are important. So let's get into it, man. I'm not going to belabor the point because I want to make sure I get in this presentation. And if you are in the village, this part will be, chopped out. And what I mean by this part, I'm talking about the actual PowerPoint presentation. All right, so let's get to it, right? And by the way, you can join the village by going to blackwealthrebels.com. Just go to blackwealthrebels.com. Joining the village is completely free. And before I start, I got to say one more thing. Get you a supplement bottle, man. Supplement, black-owned company. They make the top bottles in the game. You know what I'm saying? Go to getsupplement.com. That's GETSUPLMNT. And salute the supplement for their support of our channel and all of our projects, man. We definitely appreciate it. But let's get into a balance sheet, though. Let's get right into the presentation. So today we're going to talk about understanding balance sheets, which are a key tool for both investors and traders. I think it's important to point out that a lot of the information that we talk about on Sundays can be applied to both an investor and a trader. And those are two different things, right? So we're talking about someone who invests for the long term versus someone who's just trying to take advantage of price action and become a trader, right? So we're talking about long term versus short term. Although you can trade for the long term, and we can get into that in a different show. And but the point is, I believe that most people should not be traders, but I feel like everyone should be an investor. Everybody should be an investor. Not everybody should be a trader, right? I want to start with that. But understanding a balance sheet can be a key tool for both investors and traders, right? So it's really about the financial health of a company. So as I say every Sunday when we're doing any class within our finance church, that when you buy stock, you're buying ownership of a company, right? It's not just this esoteric number that's sitting out there. It's such and such bucks per share. It represents fractions of an ownership of a company. So if you have a fractional ownership in a company, what is the financial health of that company? Are you taking a look at the financial health of that company? Why is this important? And by the way, I see a number of folks coming in live, man. If you are here live, please do me a favor, hit the like button. Let me know who's here. Leave me some comments. I'm here dolo teaching this class this morning, but we're going to get into it nonetheless. I bring it up because I talk to people who invest pretty much every day. Every day I'm in the village. I'm talking to people, whether that's in the inbox or, in our public parts of the village. And what I find interesting is how many people are investing in companies and buying stock, and they have no idea what the balance sheet of that company looks like, right? Like people will say, I invest in Nike because I wear Nikes. That's cool. But what does Nike's balance sheet look like, right? What are any of their financial metrics look like? It's not enough to buy the things that you like. It's a good place to start as you learn to get into the market. You say, okay, I use these products. Maybe I should be an owner and not just a consumer. That's cool. But everything that you use as a consumer does not make it a great investment, right? Because if a company is carrying too much debt, if a company is not investing into their future, if they're not balancing their books correctly, although you use the product and may love the product, it doesn't make it a good investment. If you've never looked at a company's balance sheet and you own the stock, take a step back. Like start to, even if you already have done so, right? Look at your portfolio, see the various companies that you own, and then go back and look at their books and see whether you should own it. Even if you like the product, liking the product is not good enough. I want to start there. Liking a product is not good enough. You have to look at a company's balance sheet, right? Before we get into any of the, fancy financial metrics, what does the balance sheet say? It's the financial health of a company. And because you're buying ownership in a company, understand its financial health. Let's simplify this, right? We all have family, and we all have family that's good with money and some family that's bad with money. If you're going to give, say one of your cousins or your uncle, you're going to loan them money. There's certain uncles you may loan money to, and there's other uncles you will never loan money to because they've shown you their ability to manage that capital in their own life, right? Same can be applied for a company. There's certain companies that will take the income that gets in, the investment that gets in, and they'll be good stewards of that money. And there are other companies who are not going to do so well, right? This stuff is really not rocket science. A lot of things in finance are hidden through vocabulary, but we understand it because the thing I think is interesting about balance sheets and finance, and we talk about looking at a company's books from a fundamental standpoint, is that it applies to our personal life. Even as I talk about a balance sheet, I often ask people, what does your personal balance sheet look like? What does your personal balance sheet look like? Let's get into what a balance sheet actually is, though. Then this probably will make more sense in terms of what I'm saying, right? It's a snapshot of a company's financial position. So it shows what a company owns, what a company owes, and its net worth. That's right, a company's net worth. Applies to your personal life. What is your personal net worth? So on a balance sheet, your assets equal your liabilities plus your shareholder equity. Let me repeat that. On a balance sheet, your assets equal your liabilities plus your shareholder equity, right? So we understand what a liability is, right? That's what you owe, right? An asset, what you own, right? And the net worth would be that equity. So you can apply this to your personal life as well. When you look at your own balance sheet, how many assets do you own? What liabilities do you have? I find this interesting as someone who operates in the real estate space. People love to tell you how many doors they have. They love to tell you how much income they have, but they never tell you what their expenses are, right? If you make $1 million a year, but you pay $990,000, right, in debt, who cares? So you have to look at the full picture. It's not enough just to see what the income is. It's not enough just to see, what the assets are. What are your liabilities? If you're not calculating your liabilities in your number, you're doing yourself a disservice personally. And as a company, you really have to count this, right? So you have to pull back a layer on the investments that you have to see what kind of liabilities they have, right? So, it's I'm telling you, it's something that people don't do, what people should do. By the way, I see a number of folks here live. Salute to all y'all, man. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you guys think about a balance sheet. And have you checked your personal balance sheet? What does your personal balance sheet say, right? Because again, this applies to corporations, but it also applies to people. Remember, assets equal liabilities plus equity when we're talking about the balance sheet of a company. So again, we're going to start with what I started with. Because you love a company's product, it does not make it a great investment if their balance sheet is off. And the thing about a balance sheet is you can look at this over a period of time, because once you start to look at a company's balance sheet over a period of time, even if those liabilities are large, if you see them decreasing and you see the assets increasing, that's showing you something about the company. On the flip side of that, if you see the assets decreasing, but their liability continues to increase, that's showing you something different about the company. And at that point, maybe you don't want to be invested in the company. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not giving you financial advice, right? So nothing I say here is financial advice. It's for educational and informational purposes only. Anything I say this morning is for educational, informational purposes only. But what I can tell you is this, that a balance sheet will kind of pull back the layer on the company. Jarrell says, my personal says I have more money going out than coming in. What's up, Jarrell? Right? So there you go. But here's the thing about that is, even if that's the truth, the fact is you've written it down and figured that out. And I think that's important, because I always talk about the fact that when most people look at their personal balance sheet, right? Maybe I should say it this way. Most people don't look at their personal balance sheet. I've sat down with people from all walks of life in terms of income, whether they're high six-figure earners, whether they make, $20,000, $30,000. And what I find interesting is most people have no idea what's coming in and what's going out. So before you can actually turn your life into move towards the point where you're actually doing great financially, the first thing you have to figure out is what you have coming in and what you have going out. So most people don't look at that. So let's start with that, right? But you also have to look at that for all your investments in terms of a company. What is coming in and what is going out? What are your liabilities? If you do not know your liabilities, there is a problem, right? So I think that's why this is an important conversation to have, and why, I didn't want to miss this morning, because the balance sheet conversation is about your investments and also your trades, but it's about your personal life as well. This could easily have been a Wednesday show, your personal balance sheet. But Jarrell, salute to you. I mean, you're being transparent and saying that, your balance sheet is not where you want it to be, but you've taken the first step, which is to actually look at your balance sheet. Oh, my brother's in the building. Kamari says most people don't have a personal balance sheet. You know what I mean? Oh, Kamari, I thought you was on a plane right now, beloved. I mean, you must got that nice Wi-Fi, as Pusha T would say. You got that Wi-Fi. But with that being said, let's move forward, though. Let's keep talking about the balance sheet, right? So the components of a balance sheet are your assets, your liabilities, and equity, as we already said. But there's two types, right? There's current and there's non-current. On a balance sheet, current will be anything a year or less, and non-current is anything over a year. So we're talking about long-term versus short-term, right? So you have long-term assets, short-term assets, long-term liabilities, short-term liabilities, right? And we also have retained earnings as it pertains to equity, but also the common stock, which we've already talked about. So your current assets, right? Your short term will be like the cash that you have on hand, receivables, and your inventory, right? Cash you have on hand, receivables, and inventory. And when you look at some companies that are well run, a lot of times they have cash on hand. They have a lot of cash on hand. What you're seeing now, with the emergence of companies like MicroStrategy, you see a lot of big companies are keeping Bitcoin on their balance sheet as another form of cash. This is not a Bitcoin show. I'm not going to go down my Bitcoin rabbit hole. Although you see, but I digress. But current cash, receivables, right, what you have due to you, as well as the inventory that you have. Non-current would be like your property as well as your equipment, right? So those would be more of long-term assets, but they still sit as assets on your balance sheet as a corporation. Your liabilities, your current liabilities would be your payables, right, opposite of your receivables, and also your short-term debt. What is your short-term debt? That's debt that you have to take care of, on a short-term basis. But then long-term, you will have loans as well as the bonds. Remember, bonds are loans to a corporation, but it's a liability to a corporation because they have to pay those bonds back. So liabilities, remember, you have short-term liabilities and long-term liabilities. Short-term will be something like your payables and the short-term debt that you have coming due. And then you have long-term loans you have due, as well as bonds that you have to pay. So remember, I want you to remember one thing about the components. All of them are long-term and short-term. The same would apply to your equity as well. There's two things to remember, long-term and short-term. So waiting to board as we speak. I don't know nothing about the Wi-Fi connections. Cash is king is the number one law of finance. That's debatable, but we can get into that when you back we can talk about what is the number one rule of finance, because I've heard like 15 things be called the number one rule of finance. Shout out to everybody watching live. We got a number of folks watching live, man. Leave me some more comments, y'all, about the balance sheet. Have you checked your personal balance sheet, or what do you think about a balance sheet when you're looking at a corporation? But again, so when you look at your own balance sheet, if you're going to take this class this morning and say, you know what, I hear what he's saying about corporations, but let me look at my own balance sheet. Look at your own assets. Do you have short-term, right? Do you have current and non-current? Do you have short-term assets and long-term assets? Do you have short-term liabilities and long-term liabilities, right? So if I have like a personal loan that may be due this year versus my mortgage, which is a little bit different, right? That will be, a difference there. But let's keep it moving though. So why should an investor care about a balance sheet, right? We're talking about from the investment standpoint and from the trader standpoint. So from an investment standpoint, why should you care about a balance sheet? Because it reveals the financial stability of the company that you're investing in. When you look at owning stock as owning a fraction of a company, you want to know what is the financial stability of that company. And this is why I talk about looking at a balance sheet over time. Every quarter, look at a balance sheet and see how the balance sheet has changed from quarter to quarter. Are they adding more liabilities or are they adding more assets? Are they taking care of their liabilities, right? So this also helps to calculate key ratios such as debt to equity, current ratios. There's a lot of ratios you can calculate when you're doing a fundamental analysis of a company. In fact, we've already covered a bunch of them If you're in the village, which you can join by going to blackwealthrebels.com and just go to options 101, you'll see all of the financial metrics that we've already done individual presentations for. And by the way, for those not in the village is free to join. Just go to blackwealthrebels.com. But if you go there and you look up and you click on the section that says options trading 101, you'll see all of the various financial metrics, the fundamental analysis, as well as some of the technicals we've already went over as well. But this can show the asset growth trends. So if I'm looking at a balance sheet and I'm following it over 8 quarters, 12 quarters, I look at everything being long-term, specifically as we talk about being an investor. And what I'm noticing that the assets column is continuously going up, right? That should give me a little indication about how this company is managing its capital. Now, on the flip side, if I'm looking quarter to quarter and all I see is the liability, and there's a number of companies that I've seen this with, shout out to Rite Aid. But if all I see is your debt continuously growing and growing and growing, but the asset column is not growing, it can be a problem, right? So shout out to Cookie. Hey, Cookie, how are you? And Cookie, I also want to say, Cookie, thank you so much for your support of the camp. Cookie's been sharing it like crazy. It's definitely appreciated. And we love you, Cookie. Thank you so much. Also, whoa, shout out to one of our village members. JT is in the building. JT is a member of the village with the super chat. JT, we appreciate you as well, beloved. Appreciate that. By the way, everybody watching, give me some likes, man. Hit the like button. Give me some likes, give me some love. You can give me some laughs. I don't care what you do. Just do something. But the point is, look at your balance sheet over time from a corporation standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. When you track your company's balance sheet, how about this? How about let's make it a goal. Anybody watching this, let's make it a goal. The goal is to create your own personal balance sheet. Write down all your assets, write down all your liabilities, and write down all your equity. Write down the things that you own as well, right? So that's also part of your assets. But let's create our own personal balance sheets. Let's make that our goal. Of anybody watching this, specifically in the village, I want you all to create our own personal balance sheet. Now, here's what you do though. I would say do it on something like Google Sheets, right? Little tab, write down your balance sheet. And here's why I'm saying that. Next quarter, let's do it quarter to quarter. Now, next quarter, create another tab, right? Quarter 3, 4, whatever you want to do. Let's look at the balance sheet again. And let's compare the other quarter to the next quarter. And let's continuously do that. If every 3 months, we can start tracking our own personal balance sheet, we can see what we're doing. Are we progressing? Are we getting worse? This is important, right? So we can talk about it from a corporation standpoint, but I think it's just as important to talk about this from a personal standpoint. Let's track quarter to quarter. Let's see if we're adding more assets to our asset column. Are we adding more debt? Write down your debt, right? Don't ignore that. And let's track it from quarter to quarter to see if we're moving in the right direction. One of the things, and again, I've been trading and investing since the 90s, right? So I'm old and washed. So I would say at least 28 to 29 years I've been in the markets in one form or fashion. I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on classes, courses. I've trained with, you name it, guru, and I've also spent money with TD Ameritrade to take their classes. And one of the advice that helped me the most is something that was very, very simple. I've learned about all these indicators, all these different things. And it was something that's simple that's really helped me in terms of building my net worth and also becoming a better trader. And that simple advice is this. And pardon my French, but you got to write shit down. I had a mentor tell me, you just got to write shit down. And it's like, whatever. But once I started doing that, it changed things, because all of us who are traders, if you're not tracking your trades, you're not a real trader. I'm going to repeat that. If you are not tracking your trades, you are not a real trader. One more time, shout out to Dr. Umar. One more time. If you are not tracking your trades, you're not a real trader. Because if you're not tracking your trades, you don't know where you went wrong when you go wrong, because believe you me, everybody's going to go wrong. You don't even know if you're profitable, because if all you do is count the times that you actually make a good trade, but you're not calculating when you made a bad trade, you don't even know what you're doing, right? The same thing applies to building wealth over a long term. If you're not writing it down, you're doing yourself a disservice, because from quarter to quarter, you should be checking to see, am I moving in the right direction? Now, life will life. Sometimes you'll have emergencies, things will happen, right? But at the end of the day, over a long period of time, which is why I always talking about doing an analysis over periods of time. I'm not talking about every week. Now, I'm weird. Because again, I like to automate things, and this is not an ad because I keep bringing them up, but I love Google Sheets, right? Even more so than Excel at this point, which sounds kind of wild, but I love Google Sheets because I love the way it operates in the cloud. It's just easy to use. I track my stuff every day, but I'm a weirdo. I'm not saying that anybody else should do that, but I can tell you at any given second what my entire net worth is because I've already built out the Google Sheet to do so. Although I'm broke, let's leave it at that. But anyway, I say that to say this. This is why an investor should care about a balance sheet. Why or how can a trader use a balance sheet, right? Because again, I said this applies to investors as well as traders. So if you have a bullish thesis, you can support your bullish thesis by looking at the strong fundamentals during earnings seasons. So we love to trade around earnings seasons. And if I'm paying attention to your balance sheet and I'm watching how a company operates, this can support my bullish thesis, or it can go in the opposite direction and say, well, my bullish thesis isn't supported by the fundamentals. Maybe I should move a different way, right? Because again, you're buying ownership of a corporation. And when you buy ownership of a corporation, you should be watching that corporation as if you own 100%. I don't care if you got $10 of stock. You should be watching it as if you own 100%, right? So you want to look at the fundamentals, and this is how a balance sheet can help you. If I'm going to trade this company, right, and I know earnings is coming up, but what I'm seeing is that all they're doing is adding liabilities, and I know it'll move one way, right? By the way, shout to more folks leaving the comments. And again, leave me some more comments, you guys. Shout out to our brother Mark Smalls. Mark's in the building. Got to donate. Did it start? Mark, camp starts July 5th. This next Saturday will be the first week. We are at the 6-Man Center on Wissahickon Avenue. So, pull up if you can. If you want to donate, is $ by the hood. And salute to everybody who's donated. Listen, I can't thank you guys enough. Everything is almost pretty much fully funded through ourselves in the village, which keeps us going because, again, we're not taking outside money from corporations, although there are corporations that have asked us to do so. We're taking it from our people and, pouring into our youth. But I digress. And Cookie says, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Emeka says, appreciate these on Sundays. Listen, we appreciate you pulling up, and thank you guys who are here live. Even if you're watching the replay, we appreciate you watching these. But every Sunday, we want to come and kind of bring a little bit of education. So getting back to traders using a balance sheet, you can avoid companies with red flags. Trading is really about risk management. One of the most important things that you can do when it comes to trading is know how to manage your capital and not take unnecessary risk. And if you're looking at a company's balance sheet and you see on their balance sheet that there's so many red flags, you may want to avoid trading that altogether. One of the things that I've realized in being in trading communities over the last several decades is most of the best traders I know only trade a handful of things. They only trade a handful of companies because they understand those companies. And that's why if you know how to look at a balance sheet, you can figure out, okay, this is something that I understand in the company that I want to trade. And by the way, shout out to Kamari, who's watching live. Hit the like button, y'all. Please hit that like button. And Jessica says, nope, don't take that outside money. Listen, it's because of you guys we don't have to. And I want to, make sure we don't take that outside money because we're not trying to have them tell us how to run our camp for the youth. So everything is fully funded by us in the village, and we want to keep it that way. Because again, and I'm not trying to go from a tirade during a class, but people like to get online and talk about what the problems are in the world. But then there's other folks that like to get out there and do the work and try to solve them. And we believe in village. We know it's not us, it's you guys, right? So it's a combination of all of us. We just the conduits to set these things up, but you guys help us make it happen. So we don't want to take any outside capital, unless that outside capital comes from someone who's in the same wave or vibe as us, which is why you only see us support certain brands like Supplement. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, who don't know what Supplement is? This is a Black-owned company. They make bottles, right? Go to getsupplement.com. We support our folks. So anyway, but I digress. Let's get back to balance sheets. As a trader, the balance sheet can also help you confirm your setup. You combine your fundamentals with your technical analysis, right? So we talk a lot about technicals as well. And for those who don't know what the technicals are, that is nothing but price action, right? That's when you see people with the charts and the candles and the squiggly lines, like my man in this picture in our PowerPoint. Those will be looking at the technicals. Now, in terms of technicals, we do go over those a lot, and maybe we should do some more of that on Sundays. We don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I consider myself a mean reversion trader, which means nothing, but I believe that things always come back to the mean, something I learned early in statistics and I believe in. So, I just look for things to fall away from the mean and then come back to the mean being average, right? That would be a technical analysis. From a fundamental standpoint, I'm looking at a company's balance sheet. Do they have more assets than liabilities, right? Are they priced accordingly based on what they have on their balance sheet? Which is why, again, the balance sheet is so important. Think about it this way, right? What would the price per share be for you personally if we had to look at your balance sheet? What would your price per share be? Not trying to shade nobody. I'm just saying, but this is the importance of having a balance sheet. You got to have your balance sheet. And I don't care if it's bad. That's why I said I appreciate Jarrell's comment so much, because what Jarrell said is when he looks at his own balance sheet, it's not where he wants to be. But if he doesn't look at it, he doesn't have any idea, because what I realize is people go through their whole life and they're just like treading water and they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and they don't even have any idea that that they have a problem, right? The first thing is to figure out that you actually have a problem, or you may do it, right? Let's not be negative. Let's say you look at your balance sheet and you say, well, damn, I'm doing amazing, right? That's cool too. So what are some red flags to watch for when you look at a balance sheet? Something known as negative equity. Yes, you can have negative equity. A company can have negative equity. That is kind of like weird to say, but you can have actual negative equity, right? So if your liabilities are exceeding your assets, you could have negative equity. And if you have a company that has negative equity, this is not a trick question. Would you want to invest in that company that has a negative equity? So everybody's rushing to say say yes. And that's probably the right answer. But the real answer is it depends. Is that negative equity changing? Do they have some sort of product that's going to make that negative equity just go away? From a quick fundamental standpoint, if you have negative equity, stay away. Do you personally have negative equity? All right. I don't mean to keep bringing the personal stuff up, but I think that's one of the more important parts of a balance sheet conversation, is not just from a corporation standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, right? So if you're looking at a balance sheet and you're watching it over the period of time, do you see rising debt without asset growth? Do you see rising debt without asset growth? This is true, right? This is true. And shout out to the neighborhood finance guy, man. By the way, his podcast is fire. But anyway, because I just listened to the podcast with Don. But it always depends, right? That's pretty much the answer with a lot of things in finance. People don't like to hear that answer because it always sounds like a cop-out. But that's really the answer to most questions. I had a teacher tell me that as a kid, and it stuck with me. Like, the answer, a lot of things are nuanced and have context. So the answer for the most part should be it always depends. Because to Kamari's point, Amazon had negative equity for years. Amazon had negative equity for years. And if you didn't really go through their balance sheet and look at their books and see what the company was doing, you would have missed out on the fact that they had AWS, which was a monster, that once they unleashed AWS, that negative equity changed pretty fast, right? That's why it's not enough to look at one metric or make a decision based on one data point. You have to look at the bigger picture, right? So it always depends is the answer. It always depends. Oh, we got another super chat. Shout out to Lameka. We appreciate the super chat. Appreciate it. Hey, Jessica says, it depends is a lawyer answer. Hey, listen, I did go to law school, but that's not why I'm saying that. I'm saying that because that really is the answer, though, right? It's not, because life is really about the gray area, right? Life is really about the gray area. A lot of us want to see the world as being black and white, but, we want it to be one way, but it's the other way, as Marlo would say. We wanted to be one way, but it's the other way. So, so really think about that. So next question is this. If you have a declining cash position and you consistently see a declining cash position, that can also be a red flag, right? And again, we're talking about looking at this over a period of time, not just, quick snapshots, but we want to see, is your cash position building or is your cash position diminishing? So when we talk about cash position, you got to bring up Berkshire, right? Berkshire Hathaway, right? Because they have billions and billions of dollars, nothing but cash and nothing but cash. So it really shows that they are conservative in terms of how they're managing their capital, but also that they're being responsible. They're being responsible because they don't see an investment that would yield better results than holding that cash and just having it in short-term positions. But also from a corporation standpoint, if they have any liabilities, they can get to it. How many of you guys have an emergency fund? Serious question. Put it in the chat. Do you have an emergency fund? And is your emergency fund made up of $1,000? Is it 1 month's income? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Kamari often likes to say that he thinks an emergency fund should be 1 year. You should have 1 year of income set to the side, not invested. You should have 1 full year. That's a bit aggressive, right? I mean, I don't disagree with him, but I think it all depends upon your specific situation. But the question I'm asking you guys, and I want you to put in the chat, Do you have any sort of emergency fund? What I like to tell people, if you say no, the first thing you want to get to is $1,000. You get to $1,000, I think you're cool. I've also read, and again, I read books on personal finance all the time. There's also a theory out there that regardless of 3 months, 6 months, the key number is $10,000. And what that theory says is that most emergencies you have, for the most part, won't go above $10,000. So even if a year of your income, let's just say you make $125,000, so a year your income is $125,000, you may not have that saved, but if you have $10K saved, you should be okay for the most part. This is an interesting theory. I don't know if I believe completely in that, because I think, I'm very conservative. I'm fiscally conservative. So I think that it probably should be a little bit more than that. But I do understand that premise that most emergencies won't be more than 10,000. Let me know how you think about that as well. That idea of that $10,000 theory, that if you have 10,000 saved, you can probably withstand a lot of emergencies. Now, the interesting thing comes, what if you have multiple emergencies at the same time? Hopefully you don't. But if you do, yeah, so we got some questions here. I'm gonna get into the questions once I finish here. It was a question, I guess I can answer it right now. Is cash burn a major component that can be easily calculated for a company? Is it net operating income versus the debt servicing? So, great question. Easily calculated. So if we're talking about a publicly traded company, you get reports pretty much quarterly. So what I would say is you want to follow that over quarter to quarter. If you're talking about a private company, sometimes it can be more difficult. As someone who likes to invest in private companies, specifically Black-owned private companies, one of the things that I find most difficult is getting a lot of those fundamental questions answered. Because, I know Kamari is if he was here, he would go off on a tirade when I say this. But as we're building our businesses, I'm talking about small business now, we have to do a better job of our P&L statements, just having our paperwork straight. Because in order for us to get to the next level, we have to have our paperwork straight. From a publicly traded company standpoint, cash burn is a major component that should be watched. Are you just burning through cash without any sort of return on that? And this comes down to watching the management you have managing your company. Because again, management are stewards of the capital. So are they putting money in R&D? Is there return on that R&D? Or are they just out there consistently putting money in R&D for no reason? Is that cash burn the acquisition of other companies, right? I was reading this week about Apple and how Apple, and I'm going to talk about Apple in a second, because Apple was really a conservative company when it comes to managing their balance sheet. But some people find it problematic now when you talk about the rise of AI. When you see where Google is with AI, when you see what Microsoft is with AI, when you see what Facebook is with AI, Apple's right there in terms of being one of those companies, but they're kind of behind the 8 ball is what the perception is. And one of the things they talked about is Apple may not be able to R&D their way out of this hole. So what Apple's doing now is looking at major acquisitions. So if they're going to burn through cash to make an acquisition to put them right back in the game as it pertains to AI, that wouldn't be that much of a problem. One of the rumors I heard was Perplexity. And I don't know how many of you guys have used Perplexity, but it's a pretty awesome software. It's similar to ChatGPT, Gemini, all those things. But they're saying Apple is in talks to just purchase the whole company. So, there's two things you can do. I can burn through cash by investing in research and development, or I can say, you know what, I'm just going to go buy somebody else who's already running. That's a whole other way to do it. But yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, I think I'm gonna take this question. We can make this question almost its own video. We talk about net operating income versus debt servicing. But I think from a public corporation standpoint, you could track that over time. It is a lot easier than it is a private company. But I think that also leads to a better conversation about, as a private company and as people who have small businesses. I don't care if you are running a mom and pop shop. I don't care if you're running a tutoring business. Make sure you have your books together, because when you have your books together, you can actually scale and get to the next level. So Kamari says it always depends is a thinking person's answer. That sounds a little shady right there, dog. A thinking person's answer, right? Anyway, TC is in the building. So TC, what's up, TC? How are you? Appreciate that. Hey, Ronnie, I gotta give you a phone. I'm gonna give you a phone call over the next week, Ronnie. How are you? Thank you for pulling up as well. So that's the goal, but not the starting place. Yes. Dina's in the building. What's up, Dina? By the way, Dina is a trading legend in our community. She says, morning, I've got a bit of an emergency fund. I work within the union, so I save up for every contract renewal just in case we go on strike. Hey, listen, I know folks in Philadelphia, right? One of our biggest unions is talking about going on strike on Tuesday. So, In the words of Christopher Wallace, man, I hope you creeps got receipts. So you got to make sure you got something saved up. But listen, the fact is, you know what you have. You said a bit of an emergency fund, so you save it for every contract renewal. I respect that. You got a strategy. You got something you're working on. So the average layoff time was 9 months, and that was pre-COVID. So he's saying pre-COVID, when people got laid off from a job, the average amount of time they had to survive was like 9 months without income. So this is why he says that a year's income is necessary to save a year's income. And what I will say is this, because a lot of people get caught up in this idea of, if I'm saving this up, am I not investing while I'm saving? And that's an interesting question. And the answer to that question is, it depends. No, but seriously though, you don't want to miss that cook time. It's funny. I was just reading this book. It's about the massacre in Tulsa from Burning the Blueprint by our brother Kevin Matthews. Shout out to Kevin Matthews. But part of the book, he talks about, he gives some personal finance tips. And one of the things he talks about is people who follow the Dave Ramsey approach of, I'm not going to do anything until I have my emergency fund set up and my debt paid off. I'm not going to invest anything. And he's totally against that. He says you got to do them both at the same time, because that amount of time that the money has to cook, you need to take advantage of that. You know what I mean? But get back to the presentation real fast. I'm going to get back to these comments and questions in a second. But want to watch for the declining cash position. You want to watch for overinflated intangibles. What does that mean? So you want to watch for things on the balance sheet that aren't tangible, that they're putting a certain value on, that may be overinflated, right? If I'm saying I own these, I own NFTs worth $10 million, and I put that on my balance sheet, do I really own? Like, they may be overinflated, which is giving me a bad picture, right? It's data in, garbage in, garbage out when it pertains to data. So if I'm putting bad data on my balance sheet, that means that it's going to be garbage coming out of there. So watch for overinflated intangibles as it pertains to a balance sheet. So the red flags to watch for when looking at a balance sheet, this is from a corporation standpoint, but also a personal standpoint, right? Do you have negative equity, rising debt without asset growth, right? Declining cash position, and do you have overinflated intangibles? Look for all of those things. Those are red flags to watch out for. If I see a corporation and they have these balance sheet that looks beautiful, right? Shout out to Enron. Enron had all kinds of overinflated intangibles. They had straight fraud. But I'm just saying, like, if you really pull back the layer on their balance sheet, they probably had a bunch of all of this. So, you know what I mean? That's what it was. Salute to Dina again for the super sticker. It's definitely appreciated. Let's keep it moving though. There's a couple more slides, and then we're gonna get to the rest of the comments before we get out of here. But a real world example is Apple, right? Their current ratio, right? You talk about long-term and short-term positions in terms of assets and debt. They have cash, plus their short-term assets can cover current liabilities. So Apple has enough assets and cash on their balance sheet to cover all of their liabilities. They are very, very conservative when it comes to managing the capital, right? Which is funny, because if you guys remember Apple historically, Apple was never considered the conservative company. Remember those old commercials where they would have like this guy's PC and this guy's Mac, and they would show this juxtaposition of like Windows and Microsoft being like the old stodgy conservative person, when Apple's more of the creative, like free going person. But over time, Apple has become a dominant corporation. And it's funny because I was looking at Apple's, not investment advice, but I was looking at Apple today because of the narrative surrounding Apple and artificial intelligence, their stock is down year to date. Although their balance sheet is still strong as ever. They have a strong balance sheet, but their stock is down year to date just based on narrative. And I was sitting there thinking about a leap. I was like, this might be a good time. Not investment advice. This is just what I was thinking about. I was thinking about a $300 leap, or maybe even like a $290 leap or something like that into Apple going out to 2027. Because I was like, if they solve this one thing with AI, they get through one of these purchases, their balance sheet is so strong, and they sell so many products. Their product line, people that are they're Apple people are Apple people, right? I've had so many people who are Apple people who tell me that, I think, just as an example, I'm not trying to start any wars in the chat, I think Samsung has a superior product. The technology is better. But I had one person literally tell me it don't have that Apple logo on the back, though. Right? So when I hear someone tell me that, I start to think that Apple is running more than a corporation. They're running a church. And they have a strong balance sheet, but they're missing this one part of their narrative, which is killing them right now, which is the artificial intelligence. Because Siri does suck. I'm not gonna lie to you. Let's make sure my phone didn't go off. Siri sucks. It's terrible in comparison, right? In comparison to Samsung AI, Siri is terrible. Anyway, what this tells us, Apple has a strong liquidity position and they have conservative financial management, right? We always want to make sure that management is being great stewards of our capital. They're not just throwing it away. To Emeka's point earlier, it's not burning through cash for the sake of burning through cash without any results, right? So that's a quick real world example is look at Apple. We also talked about Berkshire. If you look at Berkshire's balance sheet, strong balance sheet. So what are my final thoughts about a balance sheet? Knowing the numbers behind the ticker matters. It's not good enough to know a ticker. It is also not good enough to say, I'm buying equity in this company, just because I like the product. Like I said, there's a lot of products and businesses we use who are terrible at managing their money, right? So balance sheets help avoid landmines. They help avoid landmines. I think at the bare minimum, you have to look at a balance sheet. And again, I know that some people aren't going to admit this, and if you're willing to admit it in the chat, go ahead and do so. But how many of you own stock in a company and you've never looked at their balance sheet? You've never even attempted to look at their balance sheet. And by the way, go to finance, Yahoo Finance, right? Finance.yahoo.com. You can look at balance sheets on there, which is free. TradingView, for all of us are TradingView, you can look at balance sheets on there. Balance sheets help avoid landmines, like we said, and it combines fundamentals and technicals for the best edge, right? So the fundamentals of the balance sheet, know how to use the technicals. This is for my traders, although most people shouldn't be traders. I'll say that again. But if you are, balance sheet plus technical is how you become a proficient trader, right? So let me get back to these comments real fast. That is what I have for the presentation on balance sheets. My biggest takeaway is outside of corporations and their balance sheet, what does your personal balance sheet say? Are you looking at your personal balance sheet? First, do you even have a personal balance sheet? And if you don't, let's all start today. Let's all create our personal balance sheet and let's track it quarter to quarter. Are we moving in the right direction? Are we adding assets or are we doing nothing but adding liabilities? And when you write out your balance sheet, don't lie to yourself. If you know you owe Discover $10,000, put that on your balance sheet, because some people also like to play this game where they don't want to put down all their liabilities either. Like, you want to act like, what I'm saying? Like you don't owe Citi, $5,000. Put it all down. Let's be honest about it, because you're not lying to anyone but yourself. So with that being said, let me get to some of these comments real fast before I get out of here. Like I said, we're going to have a short class this morning, but we are going to have class. I can see the 10K for immediate cash because it's not necessarily supposed to be tied up in investments to access, right? So that's another way to look at it. We're talking about, do you have an emergency fund? And TC says that 10K could be good, right? Because the thing about this emergency fund is not supposed to be tied up in assets. And I know I've seen people online now who say that I'm taking my emergency fund and I'm putting it in QQQ. And it's like, but we're going back to what an emergency fund is supposed to be. It's supposed to be liquid. It's not supposed to be tied up in an investment. It's supposed to be just, immediately accessed in terms of cash, right? Or if you're a weirdo like me, I'm a Bitcoiner, so I don't hold cash. I hold Bitcoin. Bitcoin is my cash. But the thing is, my emergency fund is in Bitcoin, right? And you're saying, well, that can, go up and down in price. Here's something that people have to understand, right? Again, I'm not trying to turn this into a Bitcoin show. I got a whole show for Bitcoin that, hasn't been on, in the last couple of weeks for, you guys know what's going on in our world. But it's my cash. And the fact is, DCAing over a long period of time means that Bitcoin will literally have to go below $20,000 for me not to be up. Not even not to be up. Actually, for it not to be up, I had to go below like 8,000. But for me to feel like my cash has decreased in value, it would have to go below 20K. But I digress. Apple generates over $1 billion a month in cash flow. This is absolutely true. That's also something that you can look at on their balance sheet in terms of their income. They generate $1 billion in cash flow. I like Perplexity. Anybody else use Perplexity? Has anybody used Perplexity? As a matter of fact, here's another question before we get out of here. What is your favorite? Is your favorite ChatGPT? Do you prefer Gemini, Perplexity, or do you have something else that you use? Okay, Ryan, appreciate that. Hey, we got Detroit in the building. Jamil, what up, though? What's up? What's up, Jamil? How are you, man? People put the cart before the horse. We need to get a habit of saving down. You can invest that money, but if your discipline is not in place, investing won't matter. I can't disagree with that. I want to disagree with it just because it's Kamari, but I can't disagree with that because he's absolutely corrupt. I said corrupt. I'm reading the next comment. I'm sorry, he's not corrupt. I'm not calling you corrupt, Kamari. He's actually right. I was laughing at this comment.
Mecca said people got corrupted PNG files on their balance sheet. Listen, that was a real thing we lived through. I think sometimes we forget some of the stuff we lived through over the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, COVID, the pandemic. I've heard it called a lot of things. That period of time was so wild that I can't wait for documentaries to come out to see like some of the things we did or some of the things we lived through, like some of the stuff that was on social media. It was just a wild time, and corrupted, PNG files were a part of that time. So people did have them on their balance sheet, though. That's not even a joke. That's right. Educational, informational purposes only. I haven't seen a balance sheet since college. Hey, listen, man. When you up like you, I get it, man. Neighborhood finance guy. That's one of our wealthy folks out there, man. But the fact is, man, most people, even listen, even having wealth, you still should see a balance sheet. Like you gotta look at balance sheets. We got to, right? We gotta look at balance sheets. Yes, some, not at all. View myself. Okay, got you. My student debt has me in a negative net worth. How much student debt you got, beloved? You know what I mean? I'm only saying that now because I don't have no more student loans, man. I got them taken care of, man. But at one point, I definitely had over $120,000 in student loan debt, which is crazy considering I got out of undergrad with no student loan debt. But it's a weird thing. I love academia and I love school. I feel like I would be a college professor if it paid more. But and actually, I'm still thinking about that. Anybody know any students schools looking for any adjunct? I might do an adjunct joint. This is a side because I just love academia. So I say all that to say I got out of undergrad with no student loan debt. In between law school and my master's degree, I ended up racking up $120,000. It's going now. So, and shout out to Sleepy Joe helped me with that too. I ain't gonna hold you. Y'all gotta leave Sleepy Joe alone. He helped me with a lot of that, but I digress. So, what's the opinion of possible legislation about Bitcoin crypto being able to be given to state as unclaimed assets after 3 years? That's interesting, right? So first of all, I want to separate Bitcoin from crypto, right? But now we're talking about Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin as an asset. I think that this legislation and more legislation is on its way. It will be coming because it's becoming more prominent of an asset class. I see now that Fannie Mae is talking about using it as an asset for mortgages, right? So, which is funny, right? When I see stuff like that, when I see headlines like that, I think back about all the people that called me crazy, back in 2016, 2017. They said, yo, you're nuts. And now I see where we are now. And it's just like, it's interesting to see. But I don't know about that, right? Because 3 years is a short period of time. Why 3 years? Why 3 years? Why not just make it 7 years? Something like that. I think that time frame is problematic. Now, I also feel like if you went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and you fully understand how a blockchain works, this won't even be a problem for you, right? A lot of these issues that you see with legislation and crypto, they're for the what I want to call the people that have really no understanding of the space. And that's okay. You don't have to understand every space. This is why they make the ETFs, in my opinion, right? So a lot of people who are in Bitcoin and crypto hate the ETFs. They hate anything that's TradFi. I have a different opinion because I believe that most folks probably should buy the ETF. That sounds like really counterintuitive to someone who's about Bitcoin for things outside of financial reasons. I think that the idea of having your money separate from everything else is very important. But I also live in the real world, right? So there's theory and then there's practice. And living in the real world, I know that my aunt, who's is 70 years old, she's not going to want to have her private keys. She's not going to want to understand the security measures you have to go through when you take control of your own money. But can she just go buy the ETF in a brokerage account? Absolutely, right? And I think that's why those are an important part of the overall picture. So I live in the real world. But I think that this legislation you're asking about specifically, I think the problem with this is 3 years. But I also feel like if you own the ETF, then that's a little bit different. That's what most people probably should be, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not there because I look at it as having control in a whole different way, right? I need to do a show about the times that Bitcoin has saved me from a financial standpoint, because being a Bitcoiner for so long at this point, I've had times where, I need money for this or money for that. And it's like having that emergency fund, talk about a balance sheet, having that Bitcoin, easy work. Listen, I went to get my car inspected this week, and I had to pay like $2,000 for like tires and whatnot, right? $2,000 for tires and like something small like that. And it's funny because again, the cost of goods and services is going down to me. I was buying Bitcoin at $800, $600. So if I bought a full Bitcoin at $600, right, and we now at 100,000, and you tell me that I gotta pay for an emergency, it's like cool. It's like it just makes life easier. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but I don't have no Bitcoin though, because I lost it all in the boating accident. But anyway, Jamil says, your thoughts on 3 months of personal operating expenses, food and shelter, 5K to 10K for short-term emergency car, funerals, HVAC, and 6 to 18 months for long-term job loss. That's a different strategy. So my question is, let's just make the math easy. If you made $100,000, right? I guess you said 3 months is operating expenses like food and shelter. All right, so you have to look at whatever your personal expenses are for that. Then you have 5 to 10K for short-term. Okay, got you. I mean, listen, I think that if you take Kamari's approach, just put a year of income up, it probably covers all of those things. Some people, that's like a daunting task because the idea of saving up a year, let's say that you make 75K a year at your job or make 50K a year at your job. The idea of starting from zero and saving 50K can seem daunting. But the thing is, hopefully you don't have too many emergencies, so your money's just growing and growing and growing. And also putting in a high yield savings account, right? There are a lot of great high yield savings account. I use a couple, right? I use Ally, I use SoFi for short-term things, but I've even closed most of those, right? And the reason I closed most of those are because I actually have a short-term account that pays, it's a high-yield savings account. It pays close to about 4%, but it pays it in Bitcoin. So I give it cash, which is FDIC insured, and it kicks off Bitcoin. And if you guys are interested in something like that, just let me know. That's a way to make Bitcoin without taking the risk of buying Bitcoin. My cash is creating Bitcoin for me, but I digress. All right, so TC says, yes, Sleepy Joe helped me too. Listen, man, folks can say what they want to say about Sleepy Joe, man, but that might be one of the acts in terms of a president, like, creating something that has literally impacted me personally, like that you can feel. Like everything a president does can impact you, sometimes indirectly, but that was a direct impact. Sleepy Joe sent the letter, was like, I got you. All right, Sleepy Joe. You know what I'm saying? So, it is what it is. Should those be liquid or in high yield savings? I've just kind of answered that. So high yield savings is technically liquid, right? It's technically liquid. Like even the cash account that I'm talking about. And if you want that, like I said, hit me up personally because I'm trying to send you my affiliate link. I'm not gonna lie to you. But I've dipped into that for several things too, to move money around. I gotta move money around. I press the button, next day I can use it. You know what I'm saying? So it is liquid, but it's all still paying you 4%. So as you start to build over time, it's going to, really add to your stockpile. I had 68K plus in student loan debt. It's probably $1 million in student loan debt just in the comment section. I haven't used Perplexity. I've used it before, and it was good when I used it. I just don't go back to it that often. I know Kamari is he likes using all the different Kamari. I can say that Kamari, he can't even fight back right now. Kamari loves software, yo. I've never seen someone subscribe to more software. It's two people in my life, Kamari and my homie Jabbar. All they do, they probably spend $10,000 a month on various softwares that they sign up for the free trial and forgot they had a 7-day free trial. So now their credit card is getting smacked every month. So I'm pretty sure Kamari probably got the paid version of Perplexity. If your Bitcoin is held by a brokerage, it will sheet to your estate over a certain period of time. Well, that's if you don't have your paperwork together. If your paperwork is together, then you don't have to worry about that. And remember, today's show is about balance sheet, but it's also about paperwork in general, man. Let's get our wills and all of our paperwork done and make sure we, are taking care of each other, man. So get your paperwork straight. Was going to ask when you're going to do a stack sats on BTC as an asset to count towards mortgages. Yeah, so Jamil, I haven't done a stack stats. When everything happened with Tracy and everything, I kind of like fell off the grid for a minute with the podcast. Just call me two pods. I was doing 2 pods a week. But I'm getting back into getting those done. And then with the camp coming up, things got kind of busy. But I'm definitely working. I've already written out a couple things that I want to talk about on Stack Sats or Dodge Trying, as well as the Rohom report. So those will be back pretty soon. You will be a great professor. JT, man, listen, I gotta, you know what? Let me take a picture of this real fast, man. I'm about to post this in my stories, man. Cause this is you made my day today, JT. You know what I'm saying? I was in Wawa yesterday and I had an older lady, and I'm old myself. I had an older lady give me a compliment that made my whole day. As a man, right? Getting a compliment makes your whole day, man. But this is from a brother, man. Shout out to my brother JT, man. So you'll be a great professor. That's my I got my flash on. I'm drawing, y'all. My bad. I'm definitely taking a picture of this, JT, because this is my compliment of the day, and I appreciate it. And I just want to share this in my stories. And I want to slander Kamari in my story. So, yeah, man, because you said this to me, you ain't say this to Kamari. This is me by myself. So, so this gives me a way to do that. So, salute to you, JT. I appreciate that. But, I'm definitely trying to get my adjunct on. I want to do it just so I can, come on here and change my name and say, make people call me professor. You know what I'm saying? I did. I also on a boating accident. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, buckets of money. We do have a buckets of money class that's back there as well. If you go to the village, there's a whole class on buckets of money and different buckets that you should have. So Jamil says I use them all: Chat GPT, Grok, Llama, Copilot, Gemini, 11. He's naming them all. This stuff I've never heard of. Hedra Notebook, Abacus, I've heard of that one. Intellectia, I haven't used that one. Napkin, DeepSeek, I've used DeepSeek. Hugging Face, I don't know what Hugging Face is, but that sounds like an AI for adults. Like, I don't know what you be into, Jamil, but Hugging Face, that sounds like this sounds like Twitter after dark right there, dog. What the hell is Hugging Face? Multiple assistants at your disposal. So I do want to add to this, right? And shout out to everybody who's using Hugging Face. I don't know what that is, but it sounds wild. But here's what I'll say. I was using I would say 3. And initially I was using them. My big 3 was Chat GPT, Gemini, and Copilot. I was using them a lot. I tried a lot of the different ones, but then what I realized is by spreading it out amongst multiple, I was getting my results weren't as great. When I started to focus just on one, and I used that one for everything, it got to know me better. It got to speak my language. It understood what I was asking for. It got better context. So by focusing on one, I'm getting way better results. And now I really feel like I'm stealing right now, considering what I pay. And I'll tell you, I use Chat GPT for the most part at this point, but I use the paid version. And I don't have to pay an assistant. I literally pay, $30 for an assistant every month. And I feel like I'm actually stealing at this point because I'm using the one, I'm giving it more so it gets better context. Again, it's a large language model. The large language model, the more you work with it. So that's just my personal opinion. So when I was spread and trying all of them, I wasn't getting the great results by just focusing on one and using one because it's getting better context in terms of what you're looking for, what you're asking it, and what you want to do. So have you thought about adding an AI show? If I did, I wouldn't be able to do it, right? Because the thing about AI, because I kind of like working, I work in a hybrid space of like real estate and technology. Well, my work is where real estate and technology meets. And because of that, I'm in spaces where people are completely on the tech side. And as much as I know about it, I get in rooms and it's like, I feel like I don't know anything. And then I get back in the real world and I realize that most people know nothing. They don't even know what I know. I feel inadequate, but then I get into the, everyday folks, right? They don't care about that. I got family members that are like trash men, right? I talk to them and they don't even know what AI is at this point. But I get in rooms where people are like, this is what they do. And it's like, I feel like, whoa, like for instance, you just talking about Huggy Face or whatever. I never even heard of Huggy Face or whatever it is you be into, Jamil. But the fact is, we would have to find someone that's willing to do that on the network. And maybe Kamari can do it. Kamari uses more of these products than I do. I mean, hey, Jamil, maybe you want to come on and do it. You use, all these different products, but I wouldn't be able, in my personal opinion, I don't think I'm that deep in the space to do that. Pause. So I track my net worth like a balance sheet-ish. Okay. So that's technically a version of a balance sheet is your net worth, right? Your assets and your liabilities. That's a version of it, right? So yeah, I can fight back. Not if I don't put your not if I refuse to put your comments on the screen. My wife had 155K in student loans. I had 125K. Listen. Shout out to Sleepy Joe. And y'all ran a bag up. So I had about like 100, little over 120. My wife was like 68. So y'all had us beat. Y'all was in sheesh. Listen, Sleepy Joe looked out for y'all. That's crazy. Listen, congratulations, by the way. That's dope. Add Manis too. Yeah. Great reminder. Getting our paperwork. Yeah, we got to get our paperwork right. My credit card is smacked all the time by the subscriptions, but they are investments. That's one way. This is what he's doing right now is coping. That's called justifying it. Listen, man, Kamari, let me give you a piece of advice that you like, because you like to tell people to get their paperwork together. Part of getting your paperwork together is knowing what subscriptions you need and what you don't need, right? I know you like to try everything. It's an investment, but I'm pretty sure you're like using things that you just don't need, right? You probably got like 4 Netflix subscriptions and whatnot. So, let's do better, man. You got to do better, Kamari. They be claimed as an educational expense. So can they be claimed as an educational expense? Kamari, can they be claimed as an educational expense? I saw someone the other day and asked Kamari a question. I didn't comment on it. I just laughed. They asked Kamari, "Can they come on? How much you know?" I never tell you that I saw the question. Can they claim their tacos? They buy tacos. Can they write off their tacos on their taxes? So Intelligent Sale is AI for investors. Okay, I gotta look that up. Jamil, inbox me the link for that. Pause. Listen, man, come on. I've been seeing the slander. Listen, I watch shows where it's just you and Corey. I heard your slander. So it's not just me. Answer the same thing. Hugging face sounds wild. You can only use it at late night. That does sound crazy. I have no idea what it is. I don't know what Jamil's into. Emeka says that one sounds wild like AI, bro. Yo, I told you, Jamil. No one knows that one. You be in the weeds, dog. Dispersed AI agents that can literally replace VAs and PAs. Interesting. They couldn't come up with a better name though. That name just sounds like, it sounds like I need to have some protection on when I'm using like Hugging Face. Like Hugging Face sounds crazy. Anyway, y'all, listen, man. I held it down dolo, Kamari. I held it down dolo, and I didn't slander you too much. But I want to say this. I want to say thank you to everybody who pulled up live. I wanted to make sure I get a class in the day. We will be back Wednesday and Friday. The whole team will be here. Corey was traveling. Kamari is traveling. By the way, Kamari is traveling from a tax conference, y'all. That has to be boring. Now, granted, his tax conference was in Puerto Rico, so I think he's really lying. He said, I'm going to the tax conference because he just wanted to go because the location was Puerto Rico. But it's still a tax conference. What the hell do you talk about at a tax conference? But I digress. Corey is traveling back to Philadelphia from Houston, but I didn't want to miss it because we weren't here Friday, we weren't here Wednesday. Like, life was life, and we're getting the camp ready. But I wanted to make sure I come up on Sunday because Sunday is the day we get to do our PowerPoints and our classes. So today we talked about balance sheets. I appreciate all the feedback. I appreciate the comments. Thank you guys for supporting me as I'm here dolo. But we will be back as a team this week. Also, bthcamp.com. If you have not signed up the youth for the camp yet, is bthcamp.com. Please support us. We appreciate that. And also, if you're not in the village, please get in the village. blackwealthrebels.com. Go to blackwealthrebels.com. Sign up to join our village. Is completely free. It's just a way for us to communicate off of some of these sites. We want to make sure that we're building a real community. We're doing real things outside of the camp that starts this Saturday. And it will be, if you're not in town, you have some family member that wants to stream, we're trying to set it up to do a stream, a hybrid stream and live. So still make sure to sign up by going to bthcamp.com. And we got some other stuff we're going to do, community-based things that we're going to do. We got our next Cash Mob and Pod class coming up, I think in September, which is going to be phenomenal. We already got some guests lined up, so that's going to be dope. But also we got some other stuff going on in the community. Everything we do is community-based. So please, please, please make sure you stay in tune by going to blackwealthrebels.com to stay into the village. So a couple other things. Hugging Face is open source and free to use. Abacus allows you to do updated versions of multiple AIs for $10 a month. Okay, so put them all in one. That's interesting. I claim them as office expense. He's talking about the different softwares as office expense. How about those tacos, though? Sleepy Joe didn't help me with my student loan debt. I pay my student loans off in a different way, but I don't want to brag about my past life. Nothing to be proud. Hey, Aunt, listen, man. We don't judge. You know what I'm saying? I hear you. We ain't going to judge you, bro. We ain't going to judge you. What's up, Edvard? How are you? How are you? How are you? Taxes life. Here's something I'm only going to admit this because Kamari isn't here to say anything, and then I'm going to jump off air as soon as I say this because I don't even want him to respond to what I'm getting ready to say in the chat. But I was teaching a class this week. I was teaching a state class. So there's a certification in Pennsylvania called it's called a CPE, Certified Pennsylvania Evaluator. It gives you the right to evaluate properties from evaluation standpoint. I actually hold that designation, but I'm going through the process of getting certified to teach the designation classes. So there's 4 30-hour classes that you have to take. Then you have to sit for a state exam. But those 30-hour classes, you have to be certified to teach those classes. So I'm pretty much certified in one of the 4 now. So I'm going through the process of getting certified. And in part of doing that, was doing research on the various taxes in Pennsylvania that we pay in state taxes, like everything that flows down to the city level. So it starts at state, goes all the way down to the city level. And when I tell you the sheer number of taxes that we pay, I was like, Kamari and Courtney they're absolutely right. If you could figure out a way to avoid some of this stuff, we have taxes that I never even heard of. Like from amusement taxes to plastic bag taxes to sugary drink taxes to real estate taxes to wage taxes. When the list of the shared taxes was multiple pages long, and I'm talking about single line items, and it's multiple pages. And I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, man, we talk about investing, we talk about saving, but taxes is right there with it. And I say that to say I'm out of here. I'll see y'all next week. Will it be something next Friday? Since y'all got the camp being the 4th. Yeah, we'll be here Friday. It'll be a short class on Friday. We'll be here. But I'm jumping off now because I don't want Kamari to comment on my realization about just how important taxes are. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. See you on Wednesday. bthcamp.com, blackwealthrebels.com. Peace and prosperity, y'all.